that, exponential growth upon exponential growth. It's like Bitcoin is high powered, super powered, perfect money on internet rails. And we could get that into the hands of so many people. I've still been hearing the rumors, or rather the grumblings from people like, oh, Bitcoin's only going to go to 150K, bro. Like Bitcoin's only going to go to 200K. And I'm like, guys, we're in a bull run. We're in the blow off top of a bull run. And you think it's only going to go 50 to 100% this next year? If you want to maintain the lead, the competitive lead that you have right now, you have to embrace Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is on the brink of a historic breakthrough. With $100,000 in sight, the stakes couldn't be higher. Trump's pro-crypto agenda, nations legalizing Bitcoin mining, and Wall Street's growing interest signal a seismic shift. Is this the moment Bitcoin triggers the next global financial revolution? Dive in to find out.
But it does feel like 100K is a psychological price point. And once we break that 100K and start moving into six-figure Bitcoin, it really does feel like the FOMO is going to kick in. Obviously, Trump just got elected. It looks like the new incoming administration in the US is kicking off this like global hash war, the global game theory, the FOMO that is playing out afterwards, and the ripples that's been happening since Trump kind of announced this pro-crypto administration. We're seeing it start to play out. In Russia, they started to legalize Bitcoin mining. They're talking about using Bitcoin business to business. It's still kind of not so much for retail. We're seeing kind of China backflip on their stance on Bitcoin. There was a big Shanghai court case or a court reading this week saying that like it's legal for Chinese citizens to hold Bitcoin. Obviously, El Salvador and Nayib Bukele is just leading the charge on that. They're doing really well. They're stacking a lot of Bitcoin. We got the Kingdom of Bhutan with, I forget what the numbers is, but their GDP is like $2.9 billion and their Bitcoin holding is currently at like $1 point something billion. So it looks like their GDP is going to get dwarfed by just their Bitcoin mining holdings. And so it does feel like the game theory is playing out. Everyone is having to look at Bitcoin like a legitimate investment. It's maturing, politics is landing on our door. And I really do think that breaking 100K with conviction, and who knows, maybe we kiss it today and then it kind of consolidates. But once it actually breaks 100K, I really do think that there's going to be a whole new FOMO wave coming. And of course, Wall Street's getting interested in Bitcoin. Most of us Bitcoiners claim to not care about the price. And then once the price starts running, we're all watching the price. And so I feel like that's kind of how things play out. Like Bitcoin price going up, for better or worse, is how most people get locked into Bitcoin. As the saying goes, you come for the money and you come to fit, and then you stay to fix the money. And I think that's what we're going to see with 100K. Obviously, as Bitcoiners, personally me, and I'm sure you're the same way, I am bull-tarded as it comes. I'm the most bullish on Bitcoin. I'm overly bullish to my own detriment a lot. And it does feel like, there's been a lot of speculation from a lot of Bitcoin OGs that like maybe we might hit $1 million this year. That still seems a bit outlandish to me, but it does seem like things have changed. And once we start breaking the six-figure price range, that psychological trigger of $100,000 Bitcoin, which Bitcoiners have been talking about for, 10 years plus. Once we break it with conviction, I think a new FOMO range and a new FOMO like wave of people are going to get into Bitcoin. And now it's not just retail, it's going to be Wall Street. It's going to be nation states. It's going to be the biggest institutional managers of the world. It's going to be retail. So I think this year, 2024, has been one of those years of laying the foundation for catapulting into, maybe the S-curve adoption of Bitcoin that we've kind of been talking about for a long time. Like, I hate saying super cycle is here because I'm wrong all the time, but it almost does feel like cycles might be breaking. Like, it almost seems like this time is fundamentally different. If the US does acknowledge Bitcoin, put it on their strategic reserve stockpile, etc., and other countries follow suit, like, we might be on the verge of seeing a money printer, to buy Bitcoin. And if that happens, like, fiat currencies are nuked and Bitcoin is going up forever. As the meme goes, everything divided by 21 million, Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom. It's like, I'm not one of these people personally that thinks of the diminishing returns meme. I know in the last kind of 3 Bitcoin cycles, we kind of have this like diminishing returns meme that like, oh, since the Bitcoin price is getting higher and the market's getting bigger, it takes more money to push the market. And with that, I'm like, yeah, you know, depending on the previous data, but now again, it seems like a lot more capital has been unlocked and a lot more capital is going to get into Bitcoin. So, you know, yes, on the one hand, the law of big numbers is going to affect Bitcoin and maybe we see diminishing returns, but that is kind of just given the expectation that things are going to remain the same as they've had in the past. It's because individuals like ourselves have found Bitcoin useful, have understood the underlying framework of Bitcoin, and we're all in, you know, like we have no more fiat left, or like, man, I wish I had more money to buy more Bitcoin at these prices because we know it's never going to come down again, or rather, you know, like who knows where, if there is a bear market and what's that's going to happen. But when you understand what we just said a minute ago, it's like nation states are FOMOing into Bitcoin. Like central banks are on the one hand attacking Bitcoin and on the other hand probably secretly like, we need to get some Bitcoin. And so if they turn on the money printers to buy Bitcoin, literally they can print all of the money ever to buy Bitcoin, and that isn't factored into the models. As the Sailor quote goes, you know, all your models are broken, and that even includes in Bitcoin models. So as much as I'm trying to be conservative here, it does feel like the S-curve adoption might be playing out, not just like the, you know, exponential log chart. It's like the S-curve where it takes a huge leap forward, and I think that's where it's at. And you know, like 1% of the population is like adamant full Bitcoiners, Bitcoin maxis with conviction that understand what they're holding. And so that just means that we need I don't know, like 99% more of the population to understand Bitcoin. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen in 5, 10, 20 years, considering like I'm pretty sure the stat is only like 55% of the global population right now is on the internet, and it's not like the internet's ever going to go away. But still, if we get global adoption of Bitcoin from 1% or 0.1% or whatever the number is to 50%, that's still a lot of people that need to get into Bitcoin. There's still the majority of the population that doesn't hold Bitcoin, doesn't understand Bitcoin. And so I think if you add those two things together, like the amount of global capital that's going to go into Bitcoin and the amount of adoption on an individual level that are going to combine into Bitcoin, if that perfect storm hits Bitcoin, you know, this next year, I think all our models are broken. Like we could be seeing that S-curve adoption and that exponential growth that we talk about.
Breaking the 6-figure mark for Bitcoin is more than just a milestone. It's a psychological tipping point. With Trump's recent support for Bitcoin and the emergence of a global hash war, the game theory is unfolding rapidly. Russia legalizes Bitcoin mining, China softens its stance, and smaller nations like Bhutan and El Salvador are reshaping their economies with Bitcoin at the core. Wall Street isn't just watching, they're moving in, and this next wave of FOMO might include institutional giants, retail investors, and even governments. Stay until the end to see how 2024 might become the launch pad for Bitcoin's S-curve adoption, and why $100,000 could be just the beginning of something unprecedented.
Bitcoin's been in a bull market since 2009. For the last 15 years, it's constantly in a bull market. It's going up forever. The price chart always goes up and to the right. And even if you're conservative, like the 250-week moving average, it's always going up. Like it's just constantly going up as more people adopt Bitcoin, more people start to understand Bitcoin, and more people start to throw capital into Bitcoin. So it does feel like it could get absolutely crazy. And all of these memes that we've held on to in the past of, you know, exponential growth or laws of diminishing returns, like it really does feel like S-curve adoption of technology, that, you know, exponential growth upon exponential growth. It's like Bitcoin is high powered, super powered, perfect money on internet rails. And we could get that into the hands of so many people as long as they kind of leapfrog the traditional financial system, which we've seen play out with smartphones. You know, a lot of people around the world in third world developing countries, like they don't have bank accounts, but they have smartphones. And and it's very easy for us to, just zap them some sats, and now they're on the Bitcoin network. And if that starts to propagate out, it really feels like the dominoes are falling really quick. I've still been hearing the rumors, or rather the grumblings from people like, oh, Bitcoin's only going to go to 150K, bro. Like Bitcoin's only going to go to 200K. And I'm like, guys, we're in a bull run. We're in the blow off top of a bull run. And you think it's only going to go 50 to 100% this next year? Like historically, once Bitcoin breaks the all-time high and starts running in a bull run, it pumps for 11 months. Like we've only seen 1 month and people are like, oh, it's going to stop at 150K for the whole year. I'm like, you're only going to see a 50% this whole next year. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. We know Trump went to Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville and did his speech in the whole historic Bitcoin strategic reserve. And then ever since then, we've seen other nations have to take Bitcoin seriously. Like I said earlier, China seems to be kind of reversing roles in Bitcoin. And so the game theory is playing out. Russia's also kind of being a little more lenient, embracing Bitcoin. And then just recently we saw, smaller countries like Poland and presidential candidates there talking about Bitcoin. And so you can see the game theory play out, or as Kaiser always calls it, the global hash war start to play out. And it's like, if you want to, well, no one will ever have first mover advantage because El Salvador took that from, they will always be cemented as the first country to embrace Bitcoin. Their name, El Salvador, translated as the savior, or rather the last couple of weeks more so, is that it's not just coming from the federal level in the US, it's coming from the states as well. And now we're seeing that states in the United States are also looking for strategic reserve bills. They're also talking about adopting Bitcoin for their personal state treasury. And so, this is fracturing into where if you want to maintain the competitive lead that you have right now, you have to embrace Bitcoin.
The global financial landscape is transforming before our eyes. Bitcoin is no longer just a speculative asset. It's becoming the centerpiece of a geopolitical and economic revolution. From El Salvador to Wall Street, from Bhutan to the White House, Bitcoin is forcing nations, corporations, and individuals to rethink value, sovereignty, and strategy. As $100,000 looms and the dominoes begin to fall, the question is no longer if Bitcoin will dominate, but how soon. Are we witnessing the end of traditional financial systems? One thing's for sure, 2024 is the year Bitcoin makes history. Don't miss your chance to be part of it.